please subscribe and share for more story. Her name was Isadora Hale. She was 69 years old, a widow, and for most of her life, she had learned how to be invisible while holding everything together. Friends called her calm. Family called her dependable. No one ever called her tired, though exhaustion had lived in her bones for decades. She had built a life beside her husband, Leonard Hale, a man who believed in quiet discipline and long vision. When Leonard died, he left behind more than memories. He left $3.8 billion, money meant to protect Isadora in her final years, not endanger her. She never flaunted it. She never even spoke of it. Yet wealth has a way of speaking for itself. It whispers to the greedy. It sharpens envy. And slowly, without her noticing, it turned her from a mother into a prize. She would later understand that betrayal does not arrive suddenly. It approaches politely. It smiles. It calls you mom. The night everything changed did not feel dangerous at first. It felt ordinary. That was the cruelest part. Isadora had trusted her only daughter with the kind of faith that cannot be replaced once broken. The memory of that night lived inside her like broken glass. Caleb Monroe, her son-in-law, leaned close in the dim cabin light, his breath heavy with expensive bourbon. "Hope you don't mind the heat, Isadora," he murmured. Before she could respond, the heavy wooden bolt slid into place behind him. The sound cracked through the room, final, violent. Isadora turned toward the door just as flames crawled across the floorboards. They moved too fast, too hungry. Panic seized her chest. "Caleb," she screamed, pounding the door. "Open this door." The only answer was his laughter, low, satisfied. And then she saw her daughter, Marianne, standing beside him. Not crying, not shouting, just watching. Firelight painted her face in orange and shadow. "Marianne," Isadora begged. "Please. I'm your mother." Marianne said nothing. Her lips curved slightly. Not joy, not sadness, but calculation. In that moment, Isadora understood something terrible. This was not an accident forming. This was a plan being completed. They believed she would disappear quietly. A tragic cabin fire. An elderly widow careless with gas. Headlines would soften the truth. Sympathy would bury suspicion. But they were wrong. Hours later, when Caleb and Marianne returned to their sleek Bellevue estate, ready to mourn publicly, Isadora was already there. Sitting in Leonard's old leather chair. Waiting. Caleb froze in the doorway. "What? How are you?" Isadora looked up calmly. Her voice was steady. "You forgot something," she said. Marianne's face drained of color. "This isn't possible," she whispered. In Isadora's hands was a slim folder. Documents that had survived fire, smoke, and betrayal. Proof that did not burn. "You locked me in a cabin," Isadora said quietly. "But you underestimated two things. My will to live and my husband's foresight." Silence crushed the room. They had planned her ending. Instead, they were standing at the beginning of theirs. When the memory of the fire loosened its grip, Isadora realized the flames were not what haunted her most. It was the cold planning that came before them. To understand how a 69-year-old woman nearly died at the hands of her own child, one had to understand Leonard Hale. Leonard had been a pioneer in early network security. A quiet man who believed preparation was love in action. "People don't plan for betrayal," he once told her. "That doesn't mean betrayal won't plan for them." After his death, grief should have drawn mother and daughter closer. Instead, it widened the distance. At Leonard's funeral, Isadora noticed Marianne laughing softly with investors. About the holdings, Marianne had asked one of them, smiling. "How soon do those transfer?" Isadora had excused it. "She's grieving differently," she told herself. Mothers are good at that, turning warnings into excuses. In the months that followed, Marianne's calls became rehearsed. "You shouldn't live alone anymore, Mom," she'd say. "It isn't safe." What she meant was clear now. Then came the invitation. "It's your birthday," Marianne said brightly. "Caleb and I fixed up the old mountain cabin. Just us. Like before." The cabin held decades of laughter. Love. Leonard's voice still lived there. Against her instincts, Isadora agreed. Standing alone later that night, staring at her wedding photo, she whispered, "Am I doing the right thing?" Leonard's smile stared back, silent but uneasy. The trap had already been set. She had simply stepped into it. The drive into the Cascade foothills unsettled Isadora more than she expected. The narrow dirt road she and Leonard once bounced along in an old truck was gone, replaced by smooth pavement and tall metal fencing. Even the trees looked restrained, trimmed into obedience. The wildness she loved had been tamed. Caleb's black SUV sat in the driveway when they arrived. He stepped out with a grin that felt rehearsed. "There she is," he said, pulling her into a brief, stiff hug. His cologne burned her nose. Marianne stood on the porch, arms crossed. "Welcome, Mom." Inside, the cabin barely resembled itself. The smell of pine was gone, replaced by varnish and artificial candles. The handmade quilt Leonard's mother had sewn was missing. Family photos were gone. Abstract art filled the walls. "Do you like it?" Marianne asked. "It's different," Isadora replied. "Fresh," Marianne said quickly. Fresh felt like erasure. That night, Caleb built a fire that roared too fast, too hot. "Nothing like warmth to relax you," he said, pouring whiskey. Marianne handed Isadora a glass of wine. "Your weekend," she said. "Let us take care of you." The smell was wrong, sharp, metallic. Isadora set it down untouched. Caleb leaned forward. Managing all of Leonard's assets must be exhausting. Marianne touched his arm, cueing him. "We could help," he continued smoothly. "Simplify things." "I'm capable," Isadora said evenly. "Of course," Marianne smiled. "We just worry accidents happen." The word accidents settled heavily in the air. Then Isadora smelled gas. Faint. Unmistakable. "Let's step outside," she suggested. Caleb blocked her path. "Stay," he said. "We planned this." Her instinct screamed. She ignored them once. Caleb refilled the wine glass and held it out again. Marianne nodded, barely. Isadora took a sip. The bitterness hit immediately. Within minutes, her limbs felt heavy. Her thoughts slowed. "What did you give me?" she whispered. "Just wine," Caleb said gently. "You're tired." She staggered toward the door. Locked. Bolted. "Marianne," she pleaded. "Please." Her daughter looked away. Smoke curled from the floorboards. Heat pressed in. The fire leapt beyond control. Then Leonard's voice surfaced in her mind. "Always know your way out." She remembered the hidden passage. Shielding her face, she stumbled into the study, found the concealed panel, and forced it open. Cool air rushed in. She crawled into darkness as flames consumed the room above. The tunnel scraped her skin raw. Smoke burned her lungs. But she crawled, inch by inch, until cool night air shocked her body. She collapsed among ferns, coughing blood and soot. The cabin burned behind her, marking the death of the woman she had been. Through pain and blur, she saw a porch light ahead. She knew that light. She reached the door of Evelyn Brooks, her oldest friend and former attorney, and collapsed. "My God," Evelyn gasped. "Who did this?" "My daughter," Isadora whispered. Evelyn didn't cry. She hardened. "They tried to erase you," she said. "They failed." For the first time since the fire, Isadora felt safe. The next morning, Evelyn introduced her to Raymond Cole, a retired investigator. "Survival isn't justice," he said. "Proof is." They gathered names. Doctors. Lawyers. Financial handlers. "They think you're dead," Raymond said. "That makes them sloppy." That night, they returned to Isadora's home. Documents copied. Emails exposed. Forged signatures uncovered. When headlights swept the driveway, they were already gone. The stage was set, and Isadora Hale was ready to return, not as a victim, but as a reckoning. The next 48 hours passed in sharp focus. Isadora stayed hidden at Evelyn's home while Raymond worked quietly. Phones rang. Files moved. Patterns emerged. Emails between Caleb and a private investment firm discussed post-incident asset acceleration. Medical records appeared diagnosing Isadora with cognitive decline, dated days before the fire. Forgery, Evelyn said flatly. Isadora felt no shock left in her body. Only clarity. They were preparing the world for my absence, she said. Raymond nodded. And paying people to believe it. The betrayal had expanded beyond blood. It had roots. Raymond laid out the plan with surgical calm. We don't confront them privately, he said. We expose them publicly. The Hale Futures Gala was 3 days away. Leonard's legacy event. Marianne and Caleb were hosting. They'll be performing grief, Evelyn added. Let them. Isadora listened, steady. I won't shout, she said. I won't beg. Raymond smiled slightly. Good. Truth doesn't need volume. The ballroom went silent when Isadora stepped onto the stage mid-speech. Caleb's face drained. Marianne froze, eyes wide. Whispers rippled. Isadora took the microphone. You were told I died in a tragic fire, she said calmly. You were misled. Screens behind her lit up, documents, emails, recordings. My daughter and her husband tried to kill me for my inheritance. Gasps erupted. Police moved in from the aisles. Marianne collapsed into sobs. Caleb shouted protests. It didn't matter. Handcuffs closed. Co-conspirators were arrested across the city. Isadora watched without satisfaction. Only grief for the child she had lost long before the fire. Evelyn squeezed her hand. You did this with dignity, she whispered. Isadora nodded. That was Leonard's way. In the weeks that followed, Isadora restructured everything. Trusts protected. Foundations redirected. Elder advocacy funded. She returned once to the cabin ruins, not in mourning, but closure. Fire had tried to erase her. It failed. Silence had once defined her. Now purpose did. Isadora Hale had survived betrayal, flames, and grief. And she would not disappear again. The trial unfolded quietly, but relentlessly. Evidence spoke louder than outrage. Financial records traced greed with precision. Medical falsifications were exposed line by line. When the verdict came, Isadora did not attend. She listened from Evelyn's kitchen, tea cooling beside her. Guilty on all counts, the voice said. She closed her eyes, not in relief, but release. Justice, she learned, did not roar. It settled. Marianne requested a meeting from prison. Isadora declined. There were conversations that came too late to heal anything. Forgiveness isn't access, Evelyn reminded her. Isadora nodded. Love could exist without proximity. Grief no longer demanded explanation. She moved to a smaller home, overlooking water. Mornings were quiet, intentional. She walked, read, and slept without fear. For the first time in decades, her life belonged to her alone. Peace, she discovered, was an active choice. Isadora expanded the foundation Leonard began. Legal aid for the elderly. Safe housing. Financial guardianship oversight. Predators rely on silence, she said at the launch. We won't be silent. Applause followed. Not loud, but lasting. At 70, Isadora Hale stood unburned. The fire that tried to erase her had refined her. Her story no longer belonged to betrayal, but survival. And for the rest of her days, she lived not as a shadow, but as proof. Sometimes, late at night, Isadora still dreamed of the fire. Not the flames, but the silence afterward. The moment she realized no one was coming to save her. When she woke, she no longer felt fear. Only understanding. Survival had changed her. It had stripped away illusion and replaced it with truth. She stopped asking herself where she went wrong as a mother. That question had no answers that healed. Instead, she asked better ones. How do I protect others? How do I prevent this from happening again? Purpose replaced regret. Letters arrived from strangers, elderly women, widowers, caregivers, people who had been ignored, manipulated, or threatened. Isadora read every one. I believed no one would listen, one wrote. Isadora replied personally. I am listening now. She was invited to speak often, but she chose carefully. This isn't about revenge, she told audiences. It's about visibility.
Her voice was calm.
Her presence steady. People leaned in, not because she was loud, but because she was real. Evelyn remained by her side, laughter returning slowly to their days. "You're lighter," Evelyn said once. Isadora smiled. "I stopped carrying what wasn't mine." On the anniversary of the fire, Isadora walked alone by the water. She did not mourn. She honored the woman who crawled through darkness and chose to live. "You did enough," she whispered to her reflection. Isadora Hale was never erased. She was revealed. Betrayal tried to reduce her to ash, but truth gave her shape again. And in the end, her legacy was not wealth, but endurance, quiet, unyielding, and alive.